Bernard Herrmann a écrit la musique de nombreux films célèbres. Le premier étant Citizen Kane et le dernier Taxi Driver.
Nature of cinema itself that it needs music. The theater doesn't need music really, drama on the stage, and a certain amount of live television doesn't. But the minute you do a story that is done on film, music becomes almost imperative.
Les compositions de Herrmann, par exemple celles qu'il a faites pour les films de Hitchcock, ne sont pas de simples musiques de fond. Elles font toujours partie intégrante de l'action. Herrmann a débuté en 1934 une carrière qui devait durer 40 ans. Il était alors chef d'orchestre à la radio. Élève et ami du compositeur Aaron Copland, il écrivit sa première œuvre à l'âge de 22 ans.
They used to have public broadcasts. I think it was called In the Modern Manner. And coming out in the middle of it was this young man. He sort of shuffled out, sort of glowered at the audience, and had written this beautiful setting of La Belle Dame sans Merci.
Herrmann a d'abord partagé son temps entre la direction de l'orchestre de la Columbia et l'écriture de musique pour les premières pièces radiophoniques. En 1939, grâce à Orson Welles, un autre génie de la radio, il s'envole pour Hollywood.
Every radio program tries to be more dramatic than life, as every play tries to be more dramatic than life, and every movie, not less so.
All the Mercury Theater was out there, the whole crew. Orson had a big house with a big lake in the middle, and he would ride around on a surf mat. He had 4 secretaries posted around this lake, and each one would take dictation of any thoughts that he might have had as he lay in his surf mat.
Hey, Mr. Kane, I'm from the Inquirer.
Are you through with politics? Am I through with politics? I should say vice versa. We're going to be a great opera star.
Are you going to sing at the Metropolitan, Mrs. Kane?
We certainly are.
Charlie said if I just he'd build me an opera house.
That won't be necessary.
Sa musique extrêmement dramatique fut vite remarquée dans la profession.
Bernie understood the type of orchestration that would go underneath dialogue. It made it possible for you to have more music underneath dialogue, and very effectively. And then, of course, Orson's insistence on good original recordings, so that you had a good, intelligible dialogue track and a well-orchestrated music to put underneath it. The combination gelled, and as a result of it was a good combination of talents.
He had his own conceptions of sound. We tried to please him, of course, and be as expressive as we possibly could, a lot of vibrato, so forth. And he immediately shut down on that. Oh no, he says, this is the wrong. He says, cool it down. I don't want a hot sound. I want it very cold and very factual. There had arisen by this time what we call the Hollywood style, which was to play beautifully and with a lot of expression and vibrato, especially with a master like Al Newman. But he didn't want that. He would say, no, forget about your old conceptions.
Al liked intensity, and that drove him nuts. He wanted a nice sonority without that intensity. And they were both effective, but widely different.
On the other hand, he would ask you to do things with a great deal of expressivity, but he knew how to mix the shots.
He had this wonderful sense of orchestral color, which he got from all those years of study and of conducting the CBS Symphony. And he would also use these marvelous sonorities, which were not exactly original with him. That's not important. sometimes they were, but it was the way in which he used them. In Citizen Kane, you know, those low things with the bass clarinets and the use of low trombones and the tuba and all the rest of that. That dark color is something very particular to Benny, which has been copied a lot by others. I don't think it was in any special way innovative from a standpoint of being different. It was just Benny's particular talent and his gift for doing very simple things, you know, and it immediately made its mark. Everybody knew that there was a remarkable new guy in town.
When sound came in, a lot of music was put on soundtracks just to keep the soundtrack alive. Then you started to get people like Max Steiner came along, and they began to particularize the use of music. I mean, you know, the villain, bum, 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 dee, then you know it's the villain, right? During war pictures, if we're to see a British warship, Max Steiner would tend to go, da, 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 dum, bum, bum, da, dum, 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 you know, Britannia rules the waves. Now, that's an intellectual communication, because through music, he's telling you this is a British warship. It makes music seem very important. And one of the things that Steiner did early on, by these kinds of techniques, people suddenly, this is a specific piece of music for a specific dramatic event. Now, what Herrmann does is something that is not intellectual, it's emotional.
He made a sound with the orchestra. He did things in his music, the way it integrates with the picture, which I still don't think any other composer quite achieved is the wrong word, because that implies they were setting out to achieve it. I think with Benny this just happened. I mean, that was just the way things were. Things just fell into place, just as he himself really appeared to fall into place completely effortlessly right from the start.
He came in at the height of the Middle European composers, the Max Steiner, the Dmitri Tiomkins, Daniel Amfiteatrov, even Alfred Newman is basically a Middle European kind of music. And they were, you know, it's a sort of post-Tchaikovsky romantic sound. And that kind of sound, first of all, didn't suit Benny's personality. And I think that he wanted to find an individual way of expressing not only himself, but saying that to create good film music, you don't do it through a series of tunes necessarily. You do it by creating atmospheres, by manipulating the emotions of the audience through sounds and a kind of magic.
His style was actually quite circumscribed. If you really get down to brass analytic tacks, he didn't have that wide a vocabulary. He didn't need one.
Sent to the violin teacher when he was about 8. As all good Jewish fathers would send their sons, if they had musical talent, to study the violin. And he disagreed. I think the teacher made him play Rustle of Spring. And he wanted to play something very esoteric. I forget the exact piece. And the teacher argued with his interpretation of Rustle of Spring, and he then lifted the fiddle. He said, and broke it over the head of the teacher.
Bernie was at odds with everything. He was not sociable. He never became a part of Hollywood. He hated it, and regarded all motion picture music as a bunch of junk, except what he wrote. And not a rational man. He didn't behave rationally.
He was crazy about his dog, Twy, and he could be a very loving, gentle, warm-hearted, sentimental man, you know. But Benny would fly into rages at various things. But was Benny responding to that rather strange and dark side of him I used to call him a virtuoso of unspecific anger. And the nice thing was that he was very generous with it. It included his friends as well as his enemies. Arthur Knight, who was a very famous film critic, once called me up and he said, do you consider Benny Herrmann a friend of yours? I said, of course I do. He said, well, then you should have been around at the party last night. There was a big party in which among the guests there were producers and directors and such people. And Benny said in a loud voice to Arthur, Raxon, your friend, is he still teaching down at USC? And Arthur said, yes, he was a professor there too. And Benny said, film music? Arthur said, yes. And Benny said, what does he know about film music? Now, this is the guy who recommended me to John Houseman to do The Bad and the Beautiful, and he wants to know what I know about film music. Well, that was Benny. You know, when he got on this thing where he was striking out against all the things which failed to acknowledge him as the king of creation, and he began to have doubts concerning the world, which is obviously not made to his specifications, and his way of dealing with it was to run around and throw darts at people.
Dans sa jeunesse, Herrmann avait découvert la musique de Charles Ives à la bibliothèque de New York. Il se lia avec ce compositeur plus âgé et lui conserva sa vie durant son amitié et son admiration.
He was sort of a man who didn't care about where he stood in relationship to other people. He really didn't. And he would just play you the piece, and if you liked it, he was happy, and always used to say, oh, well, you know, if you find something boring, add something of your own. He did. I remember when my career continued and flourished, I tried to get Stokowski to do Ives. Have nothing to do with it. He used to say to me, you keep Ives for yourself.
À 40 ans, Herrmann avait déjà écrit une symphonie et un opéra. Mais il se rendit vite compte que c'était la musique de film qui le rendrait célèbre.
Le problème de la composition de musique de film est terrible parce que c'est un élément très important du film, et c'est vrai que le plus souvent, le compositeur ne lit même pas le scénario. On lui donne le film, une fois qu'il est terminé, on lui donne un temps extrêmement court pour composer la musique. En plus, c'est une musique qui doit être assez précise, avec des points de repère précis, avec des temps très, très limités. Et moi, je suis toujours époustouflé de la manière dont les compositeurs s'en sortent.
C'est lorsqu'il a dirigé la cantate d'Arthur Benjamin, interprétée par l'Orchestre symphonique de Londres, qu'il a touché son public le plus large. C'était un clin d'œil de Hitchcock.
Herrmann devrait diriger. Et c'est quand même étrange qu'un type qui préfère être chef d'orchestre ait définitivement été davantage un compositeur, alors qu'il y a tellement de chefs d'orchestre qui voudraient être compositeurs et qui réussissent difficilement à l'être. Oui, c'est l'insatisfaction humaine, ça.
Hitchcock is an extraordinarily well-organized man in making of his films. The actual shooting process to him is already boring because he has made the film in his head. For example, he will never give an actor direction how to walk in and out of a room. He will accept the fact that the man had to walk into the room, and if that actor walks that way and it's done with conviction, he's quite happy with it. And so to work with him with music also is a great deal that way. He will say, I have left reel 3 for you.
His music is like a vortex. It goes deeper and deeper and deeper. It reminds me of some of Wagner and Tristan and Isolde. It reminds me of some of that. It has a feeling that it never comes to completion, and it starts all over again. Just when you think it's finishing, it starts all over again. It's kind of like a whirlpool and a vortex, emotional one, a psychological one, and has deep psychological power. And it doesn't matter what language you speak. It affects you emotionally and psychologically. And they'll opt for it. They'll go for it every time. It's such a cliche now because this stuff is universal.